Yes, I'm back. Put another dollar in the meter and let's try it again.
Okay, you're up, sir.
Now, utility traders test data showed that when the rear underride was built to a higher level of strength, that secondary or rotation accidents occurred, kicked cars out into traffic, or it's them straight up. And test dummy data showed that that passenger would have died. So I made the comment then about these rotation accidents and deflection accidents and secondary accidents were important enough for FHWA to constantly redesign the concrete barriers that we see. I called it an A barrier that now replaced the K rail. But and study for this, I learned it was called the continuous slope. So New Jersey started with that concrete barrier design in 1955. And some of the evolutionary changes over the years are reducing the drainage holes in the bottom where flash floods and traffic heavy water can drain through them. It was found that as a car slid down the side of that, it would catch the drain hole. We'd use them for forklift holes to move the barriers around, replace them. It would catch that big drain hole and flip the car over. So that was one way that cars got turned over. And these are a newer design, but they're still Jersey barrier slope, the higher slope there on the bottom that you see. These barriers are out of a contractor stock that he uses for job site protection. He'll set them up for a lane closure for a few weeks of work, and then we haul them away and put them back in his yard. Now they have a smooth surface because as they were designed for the car to be lifted up on that slope, but then it was found that the car can pitch, yaw, roll, and it goes high enough, and then it comes back down, and the tires hit the pavement and it flips the car, and you have a secondary accident throwing the car back into traffic as it rolls out of control instead of just sliding along the barrier. The parameters were changed over the years. They had 5 different design changes going from A to F. This is a new design called Test Level 5. As of last week, none of these have been cast yet in the United States, Canada, or Mexico. They have 500 pounds of rebar in them instead of the usual 200 pounds. So they're designed to withstand a semi-truck hitting them. There's the form. It comes from Austria. And that shows you how much taller they are than the K rail and F rails that we have now. There's the rebar cage that goes inside of it before they pour the mud. There's an F-shaped barrier now, and that's also a current design. You can see how much thicker it is than the Jersey barrier side by side here. Now the next one is give you a difference in the height between that one and the form, since I had no barriers to compare it with because they haven't been made yet. This is the continuous slope type that's poured in a slip form paver along the side of the road. And you'll notice the absence of any lifting slope that brings the car up and then slides it along. But this is considered to be as effective as the F-type barrier. These are the slip forms that fold onto the paving machine that pours that cast in place barrier. And the reason that I brought that up, Jim called me on that when I said that these secondary accidents were important enough to FHWA that they have redesigned the barriers to keep them from happening as much as they do. So he asked me to prepare this presentation, and do not discount the importance FHWA puts on secondary accidents. We're focusing on preventing underrides, not talking about the secondary accidents that occur when they bounce off of that. And utilities data showed that's what happens when you build this that much stronger. I discourage the adoption of the tough guard thing because it makes that back corner even stiffer and the car rotates around into traffic. So let's not add to the secondary accidents by decreasing another, and we get fatalities in a different column, still have more death. Thank you.
Doug, do you have any data on the statement you just made about how many accidents cars rotate out of with a trailer?
All I have is Jeff's video showing that's what occurs when you stiffen up the back of the underride.
Okay. Mary Ann?
So I've been curious what your point was in doing this. And so what you stated then was that you're against the tough guard because is what you're saying that you would prefer to have the deadly underride allowed than take the chance that a secondary collision would occur where the crashworthy features of the vehicles involved could protect the occupants? Is that what you're saying?
You objected to the term innocent vehicle when Jeff presented that data, and I did that or made motion to amend that word innocent vehicle to the not at fault vehicle. I don't think it's right to expect people to be their sacrificial airbag for a secondary accident when you could avoid that secondary accident.
Okay, so you're saying that it would be preferable to have the person go under the truck and die. Is that what you're saying?
Mary Ann, don't put that kind of
Okay,
emotion.
I'm just asking if that's what you're saying because I understand. I can't comprehend.
I'm going to interrupt right now and ask that, because it's happened in the past, do not put your words into somebody else's mouth. It's fair to ask questions, but do not say, so I'm hearing you saying it's better to ask questions, please.
Okay, then could you please tell me what you are saying then?
Well, I'll say it again. It was my last line. I say, don't increase secondary accidents in the name of decreasing the mortality of the primary accident, because you're going to have mortality in the secondary accident also.
Harry, is your hand up?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would be helpful if we could maybe have some data on this, because it seems as though there's reference to anecdotal evidence of these secondary these occurrences that are happening secondarily, and I think it would be really helpful for us to follow the research, follow the data. So if there are numbers or figures out there that do indicate that by virtue of having these stronger side guards, we would see either the same or an increase in the number of fatalities and injuries, I think that would be helpful for the committee to consider. But in the absence of this, I mean, in pretty much many things you do, there will be negative or positive externalities. And I think what would be helpful for this committee is to not talk again, just in, well, what ifs, or this may happen, but if we could actually point to data to say, right now we see X number of fatalities, we posit that Y would be reduced by this solution. And then if someone wanted to introduce data that said, and one externality could be that there would be then Z fatalities as a result of this, that might be more helpful than sort of us talking about like, well, in this one instance, this happened, or we have one video of showing this, because I think one thing we can all agree on is that if we have concrete data, if we have research, that will be the best way for us to achieve consensus. So to not disregard the concern that there may be a negative externality that arises from the policy, but one thing we should consider in our recommendations to the agency is do those negative externalities outweigh the benefits? And I think that seems to be the point that Marianne and folks are trying to convey, is that we are trying to put forth a solution. It is not going to address every potential death or injury. But if the concern is that, well, in introducing this solution, we could actually see more deaths, I think it wouldn't be appropriate for the committee to just do that based on feelings or anecdotal evidence. I would appreciate if some data could be provided to sort of back up the assertion, or to give a little more weight concern about, a vehicle bouncing off a more rigid structure.
Well, Harry, we had the video of that. Physics are,
No, but
They're-
one video is anecdotal evidence, Doug, is what I'm saying. I would like to see if there is I'm just asking if there is data that you have come across to show that this is more wide scale than just one video, because I think as a committee, we should not gravitate towards anecdotal evidence. Rather, we try and look to see if there is available research, if there is available data. And if not, maybe that's something we direct the agency to look into as part of our recommendations. But I don't think of what I'm trying to contend is that I don't think one video constitutes the data that's appropriate for our committee to be considering.
Harry, I don't know how many times you have to crash that car into the back of it and find it flips off the other side. The energy's got to go somewhere. It's either going to pancake into a cube, or it's going to rotate around. Now, Jeff showed the video and they've done the testing. That's not an anecdote. You saw that evidence, and that physical effect is reproducible. I don't know how many cars you want to crash into that, but the simple fact is you make it stiff enough that car's going somewhere else.
Doug, I think the point is that it's better to deflect off into traffic and maybe or maybe not hit something. It is to underride and for sure cause serious bodily injury. Jeff, you're up.
Yeah, Harry, I agree with you completely. We need to have evidence to back up all of our assertions. All of our motions need to have evidence that's not anecdotal. Eric Hind spoke earlier, his unfortunate, he had a horrible tragedy with a crash, but the Jersey barrier was the cause of his son's death after it got the crash into the trailer. Okay, it dragged the car site for like a mile and a half. And then when the driver realized something was wrong, he pulled over, and unfortunately there was a Jersey barrier there. The car then rode up on and then exposed the fuel line, caught fire, and the poor kid burned to death. And it's horrible. But these secondary occurrences are there. I think it's the IHS ran tests on many trailer makes. All of them spun the car out on their 30 and 50% offsets. The 30% definitely spun out much more. So if we do make a resolution or a motion, we should back it up with facts, like you say. I agree with that. But I think the unintended consequences is a valid concern. And I think that if we tell NHTSA to go forth and do something, they should do so with, technical facts and evidence to back up what they're doing. So again, all reasonable people can agree on that. We don't need to debate about, all the little things, but there is evidence on that you can see right now from the IHS, from utility, and, and there are a bunch of cases out there as well from secondary crashes. So I'm sorry, I should have made that in a more form of a question. I took up too much time.
Dan, your hand is up.
Yeah, just to add, Harry, I fully agree on the data perspective with all of the motions that we make in our final recommendation, consensus, and even minority report for that matter. Having said that, I offered up a motion, which I'm sure we'll get to later, that would look at this specific issue, the issue of secondary crashes as a result of side guards, rear guards, front guards, what have you. So it's a concern ATA has raised numerous times. I don't think that it is a concern that should be dismissed. And as part of that, I hope that we can all agree on a motion for increased, research on this to obtain the data to make an informed decision. Thanks.
Marianne?
I just want to see if I can clarify. Doug, you were referring to what Jeff had shown at the last meeting in terms of if it was not a video that he showed us, it was a drawing of what might occur. And I would just like to ask Jeff if you would accept that it's you use the words spin rapidly, and in crashes that I've seen, there's been outboard rotation, but I have not seen a car spin around. And I think there's a difference in that. So I just want that clarified.
Is that
Okay.
a question to
Any
me?
more questions or comments? Okay,
I'm sorry, that wasn't a question, was it? Marianne?
I don't think it was.
Unless you want to clarify whether it was what.
It was the cars, the car would rotate about 90 degrees out of its own lane, depending, and that's only the 35-mile-an-hour impact. So
Right.
if it's a greater impact, it'll spin even more, obviously. And again, if you're any car in the opposing lane would have a head-on collision, which is extremely dangerous.
Okay, so I
So
just
we
want
just want to make sure we don't have any, again, we don't want to play God here on this committee and say, okay, these people now shall live and these other people over here shall now, perish. That's not what we're about either. We got to make sure that we have the net improvement across the board. That's what we're looking at.
Okay.
That's
so
what I think that's Doug's point too. I'm not putting words in his mouth. Forgive me.
I was also curious if Matt Brumbelow has any thoughts regarding the rotation from all the crash testing that IHS has done.
Thanks for putting me on the spot, Marianne. Actually was just running the FARS data. So we do have some data to show in all fatalities involving a large truck, 70% they only involve the large truck and the large truck is coded as the most harmful event for that fatality. In 24% of the crashes, there are more than 2 vehicles involved. And so based on the police accident report, we can't say which vehicle caused the most harmful events. But that only leaves 5% of current fatalities where it's coded as a different harmful event than striking the truck. So yes, there could be there will be secondary impacts, but right now, 70% of fatalities are one passenger vehicle, one truck, no other impacts.
Okay, if there's no other additional comments, Dennis Lombardi.
Yeah,
are
Matt,
you good?
that's data from the FARS database that you've already taken issue with a lot of times, correct?
I do not take issue with the total fatality counts involving a passenger vehicle and a large truck. So this does not include any of the FARS override, underride codes. It's just how many deaths are there, how many involved a truck, how many involve something else.
Harry?
Yeah, and I just wanted to piggyback on that because I think there's just some nuance that should be applied. I think when you look at the FARS database, there are certain elements that do not have sufficient data to make a thoughtful analysis, but there are others where the data is quite full. So for example, if you look at like travel speed of a vehicle, and a lot of those, they actually don't have like an accurate capture of that. So like, for example, our organization would say that is a troubling part of the FARS. But again, to Matt's point, when you look at the number of vehicles involved, which is like a type of crash, either single vehicle, 2 vehicle, or more than 2 vehicles involved, that data is much stronger.
Thank you, Harry.